What's up, everybody? Mark Douglas Jr. here. I'm the author of young adult fiction, science fiction, and fantasy novels, including books such as The Prophet of the Dragon, which was my first ever novel that came out about 8 years ago. I've got many other books that you can find at my website, mark-douglasjr.com. And I also have some upcoming releases that I'm excited to be promoting soon as well. So you can find information about those here on this channel or at my website. Today we are going to be jumping into chapter 1 of The Prophet of the Dragon. I must say before we start though, last week when I posted my first ever YouTube video, I was stoked to see the overwhelming amount of support and positivity that I received from the community of readers and writers and friends and family. And it's got me excited about what we might do with this channel moving forward. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and jump right on in. Before we get started, I want to remind you that I read the very first scene of The Prophet of the Dragon last week. You can find the link to that video in the description if you'd like to hear the prologue and find out what happened first. But today we are going to jump right on into chapter 1, and the chapter is called The High Winds Hostage Crisis. This is 1 week earlier to the prologue that we read last week. All right, here we go, chapter 1. Gabriel Lost pulled himself atop the castle wall after the guard passed. He was dutiful, the guard, predictable. He took his 56 steps along each rampart, stopped at each corner and planted his halberd, checked in all directions, and then marched on. Gabriel counted the guard's steps as he slipped out of the shadows. He crossed the rampart toward the other side and eased over the edge of the wall he held on by his fingertips. 54, 55. Now! Gabriel dropped and hit the grass just as the guard thumped his halberd against the stone walkway. It would have been a soft landing anyway, but a windstriker survives on paranoia. The yard was large, with a dead oak tree towering over it, and the castle was as big as a mountain of bricks and flags. It was a typical High Winds castle built in the ashlar style. Silver gray stones were worked until square, and its towers machicolated for dropping objects on attackers. Battlements stood indomitable at each of its four corners. A second-floor walkway encircled the keep. Gabriel watched the guard continue his patrol from the wall's shadows. He ran his hands carefully over his equipment and clothing, checking for the 100th time that night to make sure he had everything he needed to carry out his mission. A dark gray cloak with a hood, gray gloves, black trousers, and boots. A slim dagger firmly secured to his ankle beneath the trousers with 2 leather straps. Hanging behind his shoulder was a miniature crossbow, and across his other shoulder a round shield. A sheathed short sword hung from a belt fastened around his waist. Red gemstones were attached to each weapon, so if he wished, he could even risk a fight with a score of knights in their cowardly armor, or an assassin with his poisonous darts. The small calfskin bag hanging from his belt contained the crossbow's bolt, thin wire, flint, and a folded hook for scaling walls. That was all. No more time for delay. The guard had completed his patrol of the eastern wall and disappeared around the bend of the next rampart. Gabriel dashed for the castle, all the while keeping as close as possible to the wall's gray stones and its shadows. He ran fast until he closed in on the left side of the castle. Its crenellated wall flashed before him and rose up into darkness. He fingered the grooves between each stone. The shade of a smile appeared on his lips as he realized the grooves were deep enough to grip. He climbed to the second-floor walkway. Damn. Another guard stood sentry before an open window. Gabriel pressed himself against the wall and peered around the corner. The guard fiddled with a pipe in one hand and a bottle of shabu in the other. Gabriel knelt and drew his crossbow. He took the dark bolt from his bag, loosened the short sword in its scabbard, and stole another glance. But the guard was gone. Gabriel caught sight of his boots being dragged, kicking, inside the window. Strange. Gabriel took a steady breath, swallowed. Whoever removed that guard had talent. Parliament would not send 2 windstrikers, would they? He loaded the bolt into the crossbow and locked the top twine into the catch. Then he rushed to the window and peeked inside. A long hall stretched before him, flanked on both sides with hollow knights of gilded armor inside niches recessed into the walls. Torches sputtered in iron sconces between the statues, all the way toward a set of doors 30 paces away. The doors were cracked open and shadows stirred from within. But there was no guards, and no one else for that matter. Gabriel inhaled another breath to calm his nerves. Then he slid inside the window into the hall. "Show them who they're dealing with. Torture the hostages. Make them talk." Whoever had spoken was on the other side of those cracked doors. Gabriel crept closer. He had a perfect view of the great hall within. Captain Lucas Steele, a blond giant of a man who wore a fine nimble coat of bronze chainmail over layers of gray wool and black leather, paced the great hall floor. He had a black greatsword strapped to his back, the hilt rising above his head. Gabriel did not know the man personally, but he knew of his reputation. The captain, at the behest of the Knight's Order, was known to torture men into service. As Steele paced in front of the doors, Gabriel noticed the hostages behind him. Men, women, children, old and young, herded into a dark corner, all on their knees with rope binding their hands. "And why haven't you found Vincent?" demanded the captain. "We searched all the hostages, sir," said another, "of those alive and dead, and none be him." "Well, keep searching." Footsteps pounded from within the great hall. They grew louder as they approached the doors. Gabriel eavesdropped behind. Gabriel swore beneath his breath and looked for somewhere to hide. No other doors, just the long hall and the hollow nights in their recesses, but there, to the right and above the doors, a stone air duct led into the great hall. He hurried to it. The doors opened, but Gabriel climbed inside just as 15 knights darted through the corridor. Wooden rafters spanned the distance across the hall, 20 feet high. Gabriel brushed away spider webs and crawled atop a dust-covered beam. He scooted across on his belly. Below, 2 men-at-arms pulled a hostage to her feet. She ran trembling fingers through her straw-colored hair. "No, please," she pleaded. "I know nothing, please. I'll do anything you ask." One of the men slapped her, and she fell to her knees. He drew a dagger and put it to her neck. "Where's the cult leader, Vincent?" he asked. "Where's the Duke and his family?" "I don't know. Please, I don't know." "Draw blood and I'll kill you," Gabriel thought. He neared the area where the hostages were being kept. He held the crossbow in his hand, the bolt still loaded. He took aim and recalled the description of Olivia. Long, dark hair, slender figure, and eye color, purple, an most unusual touch. There she was. Olivia kept her eyes downcast, but even though Gabriel could not see her eye color, he knew it was her. She was the only one calm, more of an observer than a victim, and she was in the corner amongst the darkest shadows. Perfect. "This is your last chance. Say their whereabouts or say your piece." I don't know," the woman cried. Blood trickled down her neck. She screamed. "Damn you." Gabriel got to his feet, kept his balance on the rafter while he stepped toward the wall. He aimed and fired. He dropped behind the hostages just as the bolt released. It cut through the air, becoming invisible in its flight, and cast only a shadow across the great hall's floor. The bolt struck the man's neck and sent a spray of blood onto the woman's face and hair. She screamed louder than before, as did the hostages, masking Gabriel's landing as he hit the ground. He darted for Olivia behind the hostages' shadows. "Frederick!" the other man-at-arms shouted. "Frederick!" He knelt and inspected his comrade, who sputtered blood as he suffocated in it. "What's going on?" Captain Steele demanded. Gabriel crouched behind Olivia. "Don't be alarmed," he whispered. "Parliament sent me." It's Frederick, sir. He's got a hole in his neck. He's got a hole in his neck, sir." Olivia whispered. "It is about time Parliament sent one of you in." "Has someone already made contact with you? I believe another windstriker may have been sent. I saw a guard be taken out." Olivia glanced over her shoulder at Gabriel. "No," she said. The man-at-arms was still yelling. "Who did this? What did this?" He looked at the woman, who racked with sobs. You did this, didn't you? You're a witch." Where is the Lombard family? Gabriel asked. "They are with the leader of Draken, Count Vincent Black," she said. "He somehow knows the castle. He has hidden inside of its walls." The man-at-arms drew his longsword. The woman shrieked and the hostages cowered back. "He is going to kill her," Olivia said. Gabriel reloaded the bloody bolt, which had reappeared in the crossbow's barrel when he thumbed the gun's gemstone, and he took aim over Olivia's shoulder. "Don't move." The man raised his long sword overhead. The woman raised her hands in defense. Gabriel squeezed pressure on the trigger, but Captain Steele caught the soldier by the wrist. "Don't be a fool, Hackett. Parliament has presently sent us a windstriker." He thrust the man's blade aside. Go find Sir Ellard and tell him we have more problems. Hackett hesitated, shot a glance toward Frederick's corpse. Go! Yes, sir. Hackett dashed for the doors, leaving the captain alone to guard the hostages. Gabriel eased the crossbow away from Olivia's shoulder. Despite the situation, he could not kill Lucas Steele. He was a knight of the church, revered throughout the kingdom. He should not have even killed Frederick, he knew. What happened here? He asked Olivia. I expected the religious cult Drakenkamp to be in charge. Instead, I find the church's knights wreaking havoc. Well, shortly after the cult's takeover, she whispered, the knights' order arrived in greater numbers. They seized control from Drakenkamp and sent Vincent running with the family. Well, how do I get inside the walls? Olivia shrugged. I have spied on the Lombard family for 6 months, and never once have I seen a hidden door. I overheard Vincent mention it. I do not understand how he found it. Gabriel rubbed his chin. Knights did pound wooden mallets against the floors earlier, like they were searching for a loose tile. They searched the floors here and in the Great Hall and in the servants' quarters. Gabriel grunted and glanced at a side door. Captain Steele began pacing again, striding toward the hostages, away from them, toward the hostages, away. When Steele turns around, I'm going to exit through the servants' entrance, Gabriel said. He unsheathed a dagger from a belt on his ankle and pressed the blade into Olivia's hands. Thank you for the information. Good luck. What? Wait! He was gone. Slipped into the servants' quarters and down another hallway. This one dark and dusty, but similar to the one with the hollow suits of armor. 3 sets of gilded knights' armor flanked both sides in niches recessed into the walls. One was not as dusty as the others, Gabriel noticed. He moved closer to it and ran a hand lightly across the plate and mail. A rumbling overhead. Hard rain. Great. But he had other problems. A pair of footsteps pounded from within the great hall, armor clinking as they came closer. Gabriel cursed. With quiet footfalls, he slid behind the suit of armor he was inspecting. The servants' doors opened. Captain Steele and an older knight walked out. Gabriel felt something stir on the back of his neck. He ignored the sensation and focused on shallow breathing. Sir Ellard, Captain Steele said, you and your unit stay here and guard the hostages. Question them again and report to me if any so much as speak Vincent's name. Aye, sir. His neck started to itch. It's not my imagination, Gabriel realized. Something was crawling up his neck and into his hair. Whatever it was big, bigger than a spider. The tingling prickles confirmed his fear. 8 heavy legs, a white-tailed scorpion. A killer of its own fame, one sting would mean death in minutes. Gabriel reached up to brush the scorpion from his hair, but froze. Captain Steele stopped marching down the dark corridor. He cocked his head to look at the hollow knight Gabriel was hiding behind. Well, that's strange, he said aloud. Gabriel didn't move. If he brushed the scorpion away now, the captain would hear and know he was there. Steele stepped closer. He looked the suit of armor up and down, ran a finger across its breastplate. He rubbed the dust between his fingers. Gabriel eased his hand to his face, hoping the scorpion would crawl for it. The scorpion crawled across his hand, then into his palm. He was right. It was a white-tailed scorpion, its white tail stark against its black body. He flung it to the ground, and it crawled on his boot. Oh, Captain Steele, sir, a voice called from the direction of the Great Hall. Are guards on patrol? It appears they've disappeared, sir. Steele snorted. May Lucidus have mercy upon their souls. He brushed the dust from his fingertips and marched down the hall. The echo of his footsteps dimmed with each stride. Gabriel shook his boot, then squashed the scorpion. Damnable, vile scorpions. The stone beneath the crunch arachnid depressed into the floor. The recess behind the gilded knight rumbled, sand and dust falling from cracks of rock and plaster, and the stone wall behind him eased into the floor. The fates shine on me. Gabriel grinned. He inspected the hall to make certain the rumbling was not overheard by any knights of the order. Within the great hall, figures moved back and forth and voices rose and fell, more knights and men-at-arms questioning the hostages. It appeared no one had heard. The downpour rumbled above it all. Gabriel examined the passageway. Stone steps spiraled up into darkness within a narrow stairwell. The windstriker entered. And that's chapter 1 of The Prophet of the Dragon. We've got a hostage crisis, and Gabriel in pursuit of an enigmatic man named Vincent, who happens to be The Prophet of the Dragon. If you're interested in learning more about this story, then go to mark-douglasjr.com. The link is in the description below, and you can find more information about this book as well as my other novels. And I've got a blog on my site where you can learn more about my upcoming series. It's called The Maddie Jones Mysteries. The first novel is titled Curse of the Terracotta Warriors, and I cannot wait to start sharing more information about this book series that I have coming up, which hopefully will start releasing around Christmas of this year. Well, that's going to be it for this video. If you've stuck it out to the end, I encourage you to smash that subscribe button, put a like on this video, share news about this channel with your friends, and we'll see you next time.